Hey everybody, how's it going? I had a viewer request to show how to resharpen one of these arrowheads that I make. So that's part of today's project is I'm going to show you how to resharpen basically a dulled point. This is an old atlatl point that I've been throwing dozens of times. It hasn't broken, but it definitely needs some work. The other thing I was going to show you is how to work with pieces that break while you're making them. This is actually really common, especially right here. This ear will break off. Obviously, we just want to break it across and make it a shorter arrowhead. And then finally, I wanted to show you the worst case scenario. This used to look like this, where this is an old arrowhead that I resharpened so many times that I ultimately just made it into a little hand drill. So you would use that to drill through shells or bone or whatever, wood. But if it breaks completely like that, there's really no hope. You just gotta disconnect that, start all over again. Okay, so let's get started with resharpening a point. The sinew on this has really gotten worn down, and whatever glue I used is definitely not holding up. So I'm gonna take this off of the little foreshaft. Instead of using a knife, I'm gonna use a flint chip. So I'm just gonna saw through here. Try to do things as primitively as possible, right? And again, I use artificial sinew, but you could use natural fiber for any of this hafting work. Okay, so we got the point all separated from the hafting. So now what we want to do is clean this up a little bit. And what I mean by clean up, we're going to actually dull the edges. And what this does is not only does it allow you to visualize that center line better because it's white against the dark background, but it also gives you a whole series, basically a whole line of platforms that we can drive flakes off of. If you've seen my other videos, you know that I use a little pad with a little notch cut in it. You could use just a piece of leather if you want. And here's my copper pressure flaker. It's actually an Ishii stick. So I'm going to start at the tip and work my way back. And so I simply hold it into here, drive a flake in and down. And it really doesn't take too much force to do this. Give yourself a little space. I would say maybe I'm doing every 1/16 of an inch. And all we're really doing is touching up this edge. If we flip it over, you'll see that brand new surface. And whether you want to do both sides or whether you just want that one side, you know, if you just have one side, it's serrated. If you do both sides, it's definitely a finer edge, but that is much, much sharper. So I'll just do one series down here and one series down here. All right, I know it's not pretty, but I guarantee this side is nice and sharp. I flipped it over. This side is nice and sharp. I also gave some attention to the tip, and this really was a 5-minute repair job, and it's got a lot of use left in it. Next up, repairing a broken arrowhead where the ear has broken off. Now in this case, you can see that you can just break this across here, put some new notches in, and you'll have a good size arrowhead. The same configuration, the same shape. But this little guy right here, if you really want to get a usable arrowhead out of it, you've got to change the entire appearance of it. And I hate to break off the other ear, but that's exactly what I'm going to do. And then this arrowhead will look different, but the tip is fine. And so all we've got to do is come over here and rework the stem, rework the base a little bit. And functionality ultimately is more important than aesthetics, unless you're an artist. And even artists a lot of times go for form and function. Okay, so you see what I've done is I've started making it a more typical arrowhead shape, and now you would simply keep breaking this forward towards the tip until it's somewhat symmetrical. And I know that you've lost some of your cutting edge, but this would make a fine little arrowhead, what people would call a bird point. Not used for birds, of course, but used for small game, or even large game if you shoot them with enough of these. Okay, so something like that. Really, that was just a crushing type of repair job, but now you put that on an arrow shaft and you're ready to go. And finally, we have this bigger piece, and you could take a bopper. You could take a bopper and go ahead and break this across and then bevel this on each side with the zigzag. But let me show you a tool that I haven't talked too much about. Alright, I know this is not primitive technology. This is a modern day tile nipper. and you would put a tile in here and just nip off the little corners. Well, look, it does a great job for creating right hand perpendicular breaks in anything that breaks like porcelain or glass. And so now I can just go along here, zigzag it, and put your edge on there. The other thing about these that's really good, if you work with a lot of flint chips and you don't want to sit here and use your copper bopper. Now, you could say that this is cheating, but if you do a lot of this, it actually saves you a lot of time. So these are probably less than $20 in the tile section, the flooring tile section at a home improvement store. And again, it's not making the arrowhead perfect, but it allows you to get rid of a lot of bulk quickly. Like, how about here? This is a piece that broke, and look. So you might want to look into these tile nippers as well. Okay, so then we end up with something like that, where you got a better center line. It's a little bit thinner. And now you can do your typical notching on the sides, which for me, I usually go in from the side. Again, tons of different ways to notch, but I did one little chip on one side, stick it into that C-shaped notch from the other side, and keep going. The one thing notching, you want to be really careful to just get the tip of your very sharp pressure flaker in that C shape, and don't touch the sides. That's how you break off the ear. And you're going to break a lot of ears off if you do this for any amount of time. You're just going to learn that's part of the job. And for those subscribers who are always wondering updates on everything, like you want to know what's going on with the deer, that's his big fat butt right there. He's right outside my flint napping shed, doing great.